Welcome in to the Pack a Day podcast. I am not Andy Herman, clearly. Neither is Maggie. We are filling in for Andy today for this video. It is the dog days of winter, clearly.
Yep.
If you're watching this, it is Tuesday, December 28th. And yesterday, the Packers put a handful of guys on the COVID list. So now the total is up to 10. For the most part, not a ton of starters, which I don't wish this virus upon anybody. But from a purely football standpoint, could have been worse, right? Like could have lost Davante Adams. So hope everyone is asymptomatic and okay. Hopeful to get MVS back this week, if possible, because he's been on the list and he missed the Browns game. Maggie, what are your thoughts, honestly, about just the whole situation around the league and what this could possibly mean for the Packers if there is a breakout?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's most interesting to me so far about this is that Amari Rodgers is one of those players on the list. So, with special teams having the struggles that they've already had, we saw Aaron Jones on the hands team that was part of that. Chandon Sullivan was back there at some point. So there's a lot of players that potentially could be rotating in depending on whether or not these guys are able to test out in time. It's not till Sunday night. So, and this is, being recorded on a Monday. So it's possible that some of these guys will be back in time. But yeah, I think it was 106 positives today that came out across the NFL. And yeah, when you split that across 32 teams, that's still a significant number per team. So, looking at the playoff picture and playoff implications, even for teams trying to even get into the postseason, there's a lot at stake here. And, they asked Matt LaFleur about it. The media did. And he kind of just said, this is something that we're monitoring, probably going to switch to virtual meetings, because the same way that a healthy team has the best chances realistically at getting to the Super Bowl, a COVID outbreak can derail a season. And we've seen the Ravens and Browns. We've seen plenty of teams now lose key players and then lose football games. So Packers can't afford to let that happen.
No, not at all. And just for record purposes, the players that were put on the list today were Ben Braden, Amari Rodgers, Tipa, Naliai, Ty Summers, who's already on IR, and Rocky McIntosh, who's on the practice squad. So, Amari and Tipa being players that have obviously seen the field during game time, but again, it's more to me about the spread, and you don't want it to spread. So I'm glad that, the Packers are going to go a little bit more virtual and just try to contain this thing if they can. We are going to do something a little more fun for the video, pivoting away from the not fun COVID. And we're going to take a look at a couple of preseason predictions that Maggie and I had, and how they are shaking out. Very interesting to look back. There are definitely some that it's like, ooh, okay. Nope. But let's start with the Rashawn Gary sack one.
Okay, so for context, earlier in the season, I had written an article for She Said TV, and it was called 4 Way Too Early Predictions for the Season, where I gave, you guessed it, 4 way too early predictions with stats for the season. And my first prediction was that Rashawn Gary's floor for the season for his sack total would be 8. And Saturday against the Cleveland Browns, he hit 8.5 on the season. His previous career total going into the 2021 season was 8. So that's kind of fun because now he's at 16.5 career sacks, doubled his number this season. And yes, obviously a lot of that could be due to Zadarius Smith being out, but leading the team and just playing lights out football.
Being a baller. Yeah, and there's still 2 games left. So he could realistically hit double-digit sacks on the season for the first time in his career, which is really great. Just really, really fun, I think, to see a guy like Rashawn ascend to where most fans hoped that he would and could based off of his skill set. And just really goes to show that sometimes you just need a little development, and then it kicks in. So, yeah, really love that for him. He's been just such a constant on that Packers defense. I think him and Kenny have just been just happy to have him out there. Let's flip it to an offensive prediction. And I know we had kind of 2 that go hand in hand. One being that A.J. Dillon would reach 500 rushing yards on the year. He has obviously surpassed that. I think he's in the 600s currently, right? And so that's really exciting. And then the other one was that him and Aaron Jones would combine for 20 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah. Little farther off on that one. Yeah. So
what are they at for rushing touchdowns currently?
Well, so for rushing touchdowns, they're at 7 combined. Aaron Jones has 723 yards. A.J. Dillon has 677 yards. But if you look at just all-purpose touchdowns, they're at 15. So if you eliminate rushing and just say 20 touchdowns all-purpose, they would definitely be close to that, which I think, going into the season, if you would have said that, especially A.J. Dillon would have the kind of production he's having, for Aaron Jones to have the season that he's having with 10 touchdowns, you're like, yeah, it's Aaron Jones. But for A.J. Dillon to have really kind of emerged as a 1B running back has been really significant for this offense.
Yeah, and I think that the Packers have gotten to where Matt LaFleur has always said he wanted to be, which is having like a really nice rotation. Yeah. And I think the numbers are even because Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon get like fairly even touches, and they rotate them in and out, and obviously keeps them both healthy. We saw Aaron Jones miss a game or 2 games with that MCL. So, A.J. Dillon got to get his first start as a back, and I played great, right? Like the Packers have 2 starting backs currently, I believe. And I think that it serves them well. And obviously they are both well within the reach of hitting 1,000 all-purpose yards and that 20 touchdown mark, which is remarkable for a team that, when you think of them, you think of their passing offense because they have Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams.
Yeah, so these numbers, the fact that they mirror each other so closely is just fascinating to me. Aaron Jones has 163 attempts. A.J. Dillon has 159 attempts rushing. So, and then you did hit the nail on the head with the yards from scrimmage. Aaron Jones already at 1,084 yards from scrimmage and 10 total touchdowns. And then A.J. Dillon at 966 all-purpose yards and 5 touchdowns. So just a really nice tandem. I know they're both going to hit 1,000 yards this season, barring really wild, unforeseen circumstances. So
I was on the A.J. Dillon show last Tuesday, and I read those stats to him. Obviously, it did not include the Browns week. And I said, like, what's your reaction to that? And he said, it's funny that you say that because before the season, Aaron Jones and I kind of joked, and we said, like, could we each hit 1,000 yards this season? Like, should we like play a little game with each other? And they didn't really think about it after that, obviously, because they're in game time mode. But he was like, it's kind of crazy that we both will hit, most likely now, clearly, Aaron Jones already has 1,000 yards. I mean, we have a 2,000 yard running back tandem. That's sweet. He doesn't get much. You can't really ask much more, especially because the way they play, I think, in the passing game and in pass pro.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, Aaron Jones, we've talked about him from the jump. Fitting that you chose the background that you did for this episode with Aaron Jones. But, he's always been dynamic in every facet of the game. So to have A.J. Dillon have the productive season that he's having with his hands, which was obviously one of the knocks against him coming out of college, that he didn't have any opportunities as kind of a pass catching back. It's been, really impactful for the offense to know that whoever is out on the field, even though we'd like to see obviously a little bit of Pony and some 21 in there, regardless, the backfield is in good hands.
Yep. Okay. So last one, or there's 2 more, right?
Well, okay. So the caveat on one of them is that we talked about Jair Alexander having an all-pro season, and that just was completely derailed. So that one we can get rid of that one. But last one was Aaron Rodgers having a 40 touchdown season for, I believe, the 4th time in his career. He's at 33 right now and only 4 picks. So he'd have to have, a pretty nice game against both division rivals. But we've seen him put up 3 touchdowns multiple times this season.
Yes. He would have to have a 4 touchdown game in one of them, which is not out of reach for him. I think it's also possible that the Packers lock the 1 seed up, fingers crossed, and he sits out the Lions game. So if that's the case, I'm totally fine with him not hitting 40 touchdowns. But I'd still say, if it ends up being 36-37 and 4 picks, that's a pretty good season.
So I do have to point out, because this is just such a fluke coincidence, that he's had 3 4-touchdown games this season, and they've come against the Bears, Vikings, and Lions.
Really?
So if there are 2 teams that he has the potential to put up 4 touchdowns against, it is the final 2 games against the Vikings and the Lions.
That's a really funny stat. He obviously really enjoys playing in this division. That's a conversation for another day, isn't it?
I see where you're doing with that.
Sweet. Well, like you said, the last 2 games are leaving the Packers in pretty good position to lock up the 1 seed. Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams have been hot, real hot. But to the point, I think at this rate that it's expected, Davante Adams quietly having another 2 touchdown game against the Browns, becoming the most prolific duo in Packers history. And I think for someone who grew up very much with like the Jordy Nelson era, like that was kind of my introduction to loving the Packers, age myself down a little bit here, to the idea that Davante Adams has now surpassed Jordy it blows my mind.
Yeah. And, he had a really good quote in his post-game presser. They asked him about, you play for a really prolific franchise. There's been a number of record setters, Don Hudson, James Lofton, Sterling Sharp. You mentioned Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Donald Driver. The list goes on of really good wide receivers in Green Bay. And they asked him, do you ever chase history, or did you ever find yourself doing that in your career? And he said, no, I chase myself and only myself. And it's, the way that it's paid off for him is that he is looking at setting some records in the final 2 games of the season. Right now, he's at 106 receptions. He needs 9 to tie, 10 to eclipse the record that he set last season of 115 receptions. And then his career high is 1,386 yards. Jordy Nelson's franchise high is 1,519 yards. Right now, he's at 1,362. So very plausible that by the end of the season, he not only sets a new receptions record for the Packers, but a new receiving yards record. And, as much as there could be a caveat that it's a 17-game season, will have only played in 16 games because of the injury. So, but
there you go. So there is no argument then. I mean, no, it's looking at the list when I'm listening to you read out all of these stats and all of these records that he can break. And you said it, it's not for the fact that the Packers haven't had incredible wide receivers over the course of their entire history. He's not this new phenomenon, right? This is going up against records that some guys have gold jackets that hold those records. Like some guys like Jordy Nelson and Donald Driver played for this franchise for years and had wonderful relationships with their quarterbacks. And yet Davante Adams is still not even at the end of his career. He's at the peak right now of what he's doing. He's going to get he can play for another 3-4 years, a whole nother contract extension. And he is putting up all of these. And I think that there's going to be even more records that he breaks if he stays in Green Bay. We forget. I think we have gotten so accustomed to the way that he plays and what he does that you almost you lose the appreciation for it a little bit until you sit and listen to all the stats that you just rattled, because it's really ridiculous. I think you and I have had some back and forth at points this season talking about is Davante Adams a future Hall of Famer? And I'm starting to definitively think yes. Honestly, he has maybe 1 or 2 more seasons like this in him, and it feels like a lock.
Yeah, I've been starting to call him Gold Jacket Tay on Twitter just because I feel it's emerging. And, you said it. He's in the prime of his career right now, where one more contract, hopefully it's with Green Bay, obviously, but one more contract, and he can really solidify a lot of these numbers. And I think, honestly, the kind of crazy part is when you look at a lot of the franchise records that are being held right now, he's either second, third, or first in those categories. And the big one is touchdown totals, and that's Don Hudson with 99, which is just insane. Well, Davante's at 72. Whatever he finishes the season with, whether it's 74, 75, that leaves him with like 25 touchdowns to get over a 3-4 year contract if he stays in Green Bay. Like, it's very possible by the time he hangs up his cleats that you're talking about, obviously a first round Packers Hall of Famer, potentially a NFL Hall of Famer, and holding pretty much every prolific record in the franchise. A franchise that's over 100 years old. It's not the Houston Texans. This is a very old historic franchise.
Team. No, it's ridiculous. And he was so underrated around the league for so long, and he was so honestly like put down by fans for so long as well. So to see the like growth trajectory that he has had, not just within his own fan base, but like across the league, as just being like wildly understood to be the best receiver in football right now. And yeah, you watch young guys come into the league that maybe one day will push the boundaries like Justin Jefferson will, or even like a guy like Jamar Chase can. But you never know how careers turn out. But you look at what Davante Adams is doing, and you just like, you can't help but be in awe. I mean, this, like you said, he could end up being the greatest receiver the Packers franchise has ever had. And then you think about 2015, and you think about how everyone wanted to cut him. And I think that it's just, you have to remember that development takes time, and you never know who can be on a roster, who can become the next Davante Adams given the time and the chance. So I know fans won't listen, but that's how I feel.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, to put a bow on that, because we did just wrap up the holiday season, to put a bow on all of that, a lot of fun things to, I guess, kind of watch for in the next couple of weeks. 2 division games, Packers still number 1 seed, in very good position if they win out. Obviously, they maintain the number 1 seed in the playoffs, roll through Lambeau, but some fun records that could potentially be set in the process of what is already obviously a historic franchise.
Unbelievable. Well, that does it for us. Andy will be back. If you're happy or not about that, I'm sorry. And we will catch you guys on our episodes and on Packs What She Said. Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.